Orbán is out. Brussels officials probably splashed quite a bit of champagne on their suits when they popped the corks. After all, they'd endured 16 years, endured the rule. Law mechanism withholding billions of euros without ever prying the words, "You are all fools," from Orbán's mouth. And now they finally outlasted him. The new man in charge is Péter Magyar, 43, well-coiffed, impeccably tailored, speaking English and French. French, just imagine a Hungarian prime minister at an EU summit, able to say, "I fully understand your concerns" in French without an interpreter. What a vision of civilization that is. The EU Commission president's congratulatory letter was so effusively warm that one suspects she had the template drafted in advance, waiting only for Orbán to expire, in the political sense, before hitting send. Magyar is certainly worth Brussels' affection. He promises rule of law reforms, media freedom, normalized relations with the EU. Every word precisely calibrated to match the conditions for unfreezing EU funds. And here is the beauty of it. Orbán spent 16 years fighting Brussels without budging a single cent. Magyar smiled, and billions of euros began to thaw. You have to admire that kind of efficiency. Of course, Magyar was groomed by Orbán himself, former member of Fidesz's inner circle, former government diplomat, husband of a former regime heavyweight. Oh no, ex-husband. He prospered within Orbán's system for over a decade, then in the spring of 2024, suddenly discovered that this very system was rotten to the core, broke with it resolutely, and turned on a dime into the flag bearer of the opposition. The speed, precision, and cleanliness of this pivot were so impeccable that even gymnastics judges would have awarded him a perfect 10. Some have called him Hungary's Navalny, which is probably the worst thing that has ever happened to Navalny. Navalny crashed into the system from the outside, bloodied and battered. Magyar jumped out of the system from the inside, having carefully measured the distance beforehand to make sure the landing spot was carpeted in red. And what was the first order of business upon taking power? Demanding that the president, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and the head of the audit office all voluntarily resign by the end of May. Note that the quotation marks were supplied by Magyar himself. The man understands the art of language. When Orbán came to power in 2010, he purged these same institutions, but at least it took him 2 years, and at least he went through the motions of due process. Magyar has accelerated the timeline. 2 months, done. On the grounds that the people gave him a mandate. The mandate is, of course, real enough. But it brings to mind an ancient truth. Dictators work slowly because they don't care about efficiency. Reformers work fast because they can't wait. The difference between fast and slow sometimes is simply a matter of whether you've repackaged the same playbook as necessary transitional measures under a state of emergency. As for the appointment of Justice Minister, Magyar chose his own brother-in-law. Note, not a distant cousin, not a college roommate, his brother-in-law. When Orbán installed cronies back in the day, he at least had them change their surname, take a detour, wear a technocrat label. Magyar has dispensed with even that formality, appointing a family member outright, and then his supporters come out to explain, this is a transitional period. Transitional period. What a wonderfully versatile phrase. It can explain the extreme concentration of power, the familialization of personnel, the rapid purge of institutions, and even why you've just appointed your brother-in-law as Justice Minister. And when does the transitional period end? No one asks. You just keep transitioning until the entire term has transitioned right on by. On the media front, it is a textbook operation. Magyar suspended public media's news services, calling them factories of lies. The statement itself isn't wrong. Under Orbán, public media was indeed the government's mouthpiece, broadcasting content so politically charged that even the weather forecast came with an ideological slant. But the interesting part is that Magyar's team immediately began vetting which journalists were insufficiently objective and which editors were too closely connected to the old regime. And so, a government that claims to be liberating the media has, within 10 days of taking office, set the entire media world whispering to one another, which side have they got you down as? It took Orbán 10 years to turn public media into a propaganda machine. Magyar's team seems to be proving they can build a more efficient version in 10 weeks. Progress is always heartening. The diplomatic theater is even more intriguing. Magyar says he wants closer ties with the United States. The EU nods. Says he wants normalized relations with Brussels. The EU smiles. Says he opposes Ukraine's fast-track EU accession. The smile on the EU's face freezes for half a second. And then Magyar adds, let a referendum decide. And the EU's expression relaxes again. See, this is Magyar's genius. Orbán says, no, rude, direct, leaving everyone awkward. Magyar says, let the people decide, democratic, civilized, unimpeachable. And the result, Hungarian public opinion on Ukraine's accession will only be more conservative than Orbán's. The referendum outcome can be predicted with your eyes closed. But Brussels doesn't mind because the procedure is correct. The form is civilized. The rejection has been authorized by the people. Orbán banged the table with his fist. Magyar bangs it with a fist. Inside a white glove. Same table, much less noise. At bottom, the EU has never genuinely cared whether Hungary is a democracy. All it has ever cared about is whether Hungary's leader can behave like a normal person at summits. Orbán's problem wasn't that he concentrated power. Plenty of EU leaders concentrate power, and Magyar is doing it at an even faster clip without Brussels freezing anyone's funds. Orbán's problem was that he openly flouted the EU's rules of the game, saying ugly things at press conferences, making everyone wait for him during votes, standing in the wrong spot in the group photo and not even apologizing. He was a diplomatic protocol disaster, and Magyar, conveniently, is not. Magyar will express regret before the veto, gratitude before the objection, and cite the rule of law before hollowing it out. For the EU, that is more than enough, and so we return to the headline, the EU saves Hungarians from Hungarians. What a touching formulation. The reality is that Hungarians use their ballots to swap out a 70-year-old Orbán for a 43-year-old Orbán. The former had thinning hair, the latter has a polished coiffure, the former spoke like a truck driver. The latter speaks like a think tank fellow. The former rapped the table with his knuckles. The latter uses his fingertips. But on the things that truly matter, the concentration of power, the domestication of institutions, the infiltration of family ties, the flaunting of sovereignty, you won't discern much essential difference. The only difference is that the younger one has made the EU feel as though it has won a historic victory. The champagne has been drunk, the bill will still be paid by Hungarians.